Alberta and how we're doing today. So here we have a very, very lovely, young, charming, handsome man
You're kind.
from Brooks Madison Hat, Barry Morishita himself, the leader of the Alberta Party. And the guy is absolutely a stunner when he talks about Alberta. And I had a conversation with him, and here we are. So Barry, let's know more about you.
Well, a little bit about me. I've come from municipal politics, so I was involved for 16 years in the city of Brooks, the last 5 as mayor. And I was also involved on a provincial scale. I was president of the then called the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, which is now Alberta Municipalities. I was on the board for 7 years there and spent 4 years as president. In that time, I toured the entire province of Alberta over 4 summers, about 80, 85 days of travel. Was amazing. And I got to know a lot about the province. And, Alberta's got some incredible communities and a lot of untapped potential. And it was kind of that's the basis about which I kind of moved into provincial politics. I'm married. I have a couple of kids. One's an actor here in Calgary. The other one's a teacher, married to a teacher. I have a couple of grandchildren. And you say I'm young, and I'm not. That's very nice of you to say, but yeah. So I've lived in Alberta my whole life. I love the place, and I'm looking forward to being given an opportunity to give back.
That's lovely. You are definitely young because anybody who has a spirit, anybody who wants to learn, is always going to be young.
That's a
And
good. That's
so
a good way to
goes
look
for a
at it.
person like you.
Yeah.
So Barry, where is the Alberta Party standing today?
So the Alberta Party,
Or should I say,
yeah,
where do
yeah,
you put yourself in this situation where it's all NDP, NDP, where it's, the
yeah.
polls say UCP, UCP, UCP. So what is it that the Alberta Party is looking at as an offering for the Albertans?
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that the Alberta Party operates differently. We're more principle based. We are, if you want to use an ideological left to right, we are in the middle. And the reason we're in the middle is because we're practical and thoughtful about fixing problems. And more that the party fits candidates, I think, rather than the candidate fits into the party. So we really encourage our candidates, and we have about 13 right now, to be themselves, be their authentic community builders that they are. Everybody comes with a different perspective, because your background or where you grew up or what kind of job you do, those things are important to bring those perspectives. And we're not talking about handing you a sheet and saying, here's what you say about everything. And I looked at the other parties. I mean, I was approached by the UCP and the NDP to run.
Wow.
And
So this young man was approached. So this was before you being
before, yeah,
the
yeah,
mayor,
before
or
I was still in municipal politics.
okay,
And, through the time when Mr. Kenny was becoming the leader and into the 2019 election, and subsequently leading up to this election, yeah, I was approached by both parties
wow,
who asked me to consider running. And when I looked at the machinery of the party, when I looked at kind of how they treated individuals, it wasn't a fit for me in the sense that I I'm a team player. Don't get me wrong. You can't not be a team player and be have a good council. And I've been part of some great
true that.
councils in the city of
Yeah,
Brooks, right?
yeah, yeah.
You disagree, but you move on once the team decides to go a direction. I didn't see an opportunity for me to really represent my community really well. It just didn't seem a fit for me. And there were some principles of the part, like some positions on policy that the parties were very rigid on that they just didn't fit. And so I left it alone for a while. And then, as my term came to a close, and I saw the challenges particular municipalities were facing, that a lot of the reasons that projects weren't being done in communities, and communities can be far big and small, as you know, Calgary, but inside Calgary are many communities.
Sure.
And there was always seems to be a provincial component that was holding them back. And sometimes it was funding, sometimes it was approvals, but either way, there just seemed to be a lot of congestion by provincial regulation, by lack of kind of provincial awareness, maybe. that I thought we had to do things different in order to move the province forward, and so the Alberta Party fit me.
So, if you look at from the philosophy of the leader of the Alberta Party, we can say this thing. It's been 6 months to for the premier as an MLA for Brooks Madison had. Do you think she has been able to also be a little MLA than the premier? Has her presence been
Yeah.
felt in the constituency there? Because
Well,
you've been the mayor there.
That's right. And you know what? I have some sympathy for the fact that she's the premier, so she has a big responsibility. And to the extent that I'm aware of, I know she's been in the community a few times since she was elected. Now, I don't know how effective she's been in terms of dealing with issues for residents or whatnot, and that remains to be seen. But I think the key to being the MLA is that you first have to represent the people that are there. And the fact is that there are 87 constituencies in the province
Right.
of Alberta. Within even some constituencies, there's a lot of uniqueness in the communities. that
Yeah,
are in
different
the-
neighborhoods.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of that. And then when you put it on, you kind of overlap that with the province, there's a significant
yeah.
amount of differences.
Yeah, sure.
And I think one of the things that if you have good MLAs, that you can, as a province, start to think about allowing unique solutions for problems. Going to school seems like, if we take education, everybody goes to school when they're 5 or 6 years old, they graduate in grade 12, it seems relatively simple. But the pathway in there can be significantly different.
Sure.
Whether you're a recent immigrant,
Yeah.
whether you have a disability, whether you have family trauma or social issues, whether you're really smart, all of those things, or whether you have certain skills or certain aptitudes, there's a lot of uniqueness in those situations. So you can't just place one school model and say everybody does that
Yeah,
and expect to have success. And I think you have to do that on a community basis too.
that's right.
And I think the province, the way it runs itself, very centric around the premier, very small group of people, whether it's executive council or that group, are making all the decisions on a province-wide basis. And I get people to ask them, is our healthcare better in 10 years? 10 years ago, has it gotten better? Has our education system improved in 10 years? Has our social services system delivered better over the 10 years? And I would say that while we're very blessed to live in Alberta, I would say it's not getting better. And I think that's because we haven't brought any unique solutions to the table. And that's why I think our MLAs would have that ability to do that, and we would encourage those kinds of activities.
Interesting. On this point, for the past, if you look at since 2015, we can look at when Rachel Notley came in, and then the UCP began with the Jason Kenney coming in.
Yeah.
So you feel these 10 years that have been there, has Alberta gone, according to you, what I'm feeling that you're saying is that Alberta is standing right where it was standing 10 years back?
Yeah, I don't think we've made a lot of progress. I look at my daughter, who's a teacher, married to a teacher, and she's been teaching for 10 years. And by any accounts, I have a sister in the system. I have lots of friends in the system, and I would say their classes are getting bigger. The makeup of their classrooms is more complex, and yet somehow they're doing more paperwork. They have more students. They have less educational aids. They have less resources. Now, to me, that doesn't make sense. That's backwards. We were a million less people 10 years ago.
That's true.
We're 4.5 million people now. Why aren't we having? When I was first elected in 1998, so that tells you that I'm not young.
Yeah, no, that
So,
that was the counselor, and
yeah.
you became smarter and younger to become the mayor
That's
then.
good, thank you. But we were struggling with doctor recruitment in 1998. And what have
And
we
we're still
done?
struggling with that right
That's
now.
right. And again, give the government credit. They've just put some money into creating more medical training spaces. But for 10 years it hasn't happened. And even what they're doing now isn't enough to make some ground over the next 10
Do
years.
you think the government actually realizes what the problem is?
I on the ground, I would, I don't think they realize the crisis that's actually going on.
So can you put it in a point? What is actually the crisis in Alberta today?
Well, I think when it comes to healthcare, I think working conditions, what's demanded of frontline workers in order to make the system work. I just spoke to somebody who had some experience in the Peter Lougheed Center. It's, some places, parts of it are running at 130% capacity. They got patients in the hallways, 3 to a room. They're making it work, albeit they are making it work. And you know what? You can't thank those healthcare workers enough. But how long can you do that for before the system collapses under itself? And there's not a lot of immediate help. So we've seen this coming for a long time. And what I think the tragedy of all of this over the last 10 years is that we haven't had the leadership that has had the courage, and I think it's the political courage, because it's the right thing, to come to Albertans and say, hey, you know what? We have underfunded, we have poorly planned this system, we need to make up for it, and that's going to cost us. And we need to priority spend in these areas instead of spending money on some things. We have to go to Albertans and say that. We keep pouring more money
But don't
into
you
it.
think the situation got a little uneasy and out of hands because of the COVID coming in? No, that was completely, that took the entire world, the entire
Absolutely.
globe by a huge shock, and everybody's plans went haywire, and nobody didn't know how to plan because nobody had planned for COVID.
No,
Nobody.
agreed.
So how would you rate? How did Alberta respond to the entire COVID situation?
Well, I know we had a pandemic response plan that we didn't follow very well. And I think at the end, because we were, there were so many unknowns, I think there were 2 things we could have done better. And you know what? Again, I have sympathy for the leadership at the time because there was so many unknowns. But Albertans are smart, and we have to trust them. And so, I think we have to go to them with the information we know, make good recommendations, and I think most of the time Albertans will look after themselves and look after their neighbors, look after their friends. When we had the COVID infection in Brooks in May of the first year, we had the worst infection rate ever. It was over 4,400 or somewhere around there, 4,400 per 100,000, the highest infection rate in North America. We didn't have vaccines then. We had very little support for things, but the city, in concert with the county of Newell, in concert with the industry there, we worked really hard to deal with things. We had our first mass testing site, but we put out a lot of information, as much as we possibly could. And in 9 weeks, our infection was back down to 0.
Wow.
And that's because I think the residents of the area took it on themselves to do what they could do. Now, do you get 100% of the people doing the right thing? You don't. That's why we have traffic laws and police,
that's
right?
right.
It just happens. But for a vast majority of people, I think the problem we had during COVID was we were not very clear and transparent about why we were making decisions we were making. And so people could, work that through themselves and make good judgments instead of speculative judgments. And then, I think people took political advantage of the situation. I think people took advantage of people's mistrust and fear, and created those divisions for their political gain or for other gain. And you can't always have the answer for a situation, and I think Albertans know that. But I think you have to be honest and upfront with them about what's going on. I think you have to take advice from people outside your circle. I think we have to deal with facts and follow science. And if we'd have stayed steady on that road, I think we would have been in a better place. That being said, COVID also exposed a lot of problems with the systems we have.
That's true, 100%. Lot of situations, lot of processes, lot of things that we were doing were exposed at the time of COVID.
Yep.
But I think everybody, people came together. The fear came out. Everybody was in pain. Everybody was in grief. But there was always hope that things would get better. And again, we're standing at the same point, Barry, where we are sitting exactly almost 2 months away from the elections,
Yep.
which happened in May. And again, today we are standing at a place where there's hope. So once we're looking at you getting around 15 seats there, candidates over there who are going to fight in these elections. What is it going to, what is the Alberta Party going to represent when those people from your party are going to sit into this Legislative Assembly hall? And what is it that they're going to first ask for? What are they going to stand up for? What are they going to be known for?
So I think there's two things. Well, there's more than two things, but there's primary. One is the way we govern. So, our candidates clearly know they're not allowed to personally attack anybody. So I don't know if you've been watching anything that's going on in the legislature lately. It's terrible, and it isn't getting better. And we had commitments from both leaders that they were going to do it better, and they still aren't. They're name calling and trying to get a clip on the news about some glib remark or some witty alliteration of something just to get on the news, but they're not solving problems.
They seem to be getting inspired as politicians from somewhere.
Yeah, and I think it's more the show part of politics and not the practical part.
Yes.
So our MLAs are going to be committed to that. We are, and if we are fortunate enough to get some seats, and for instance, if we're in a minority legislative position in Edmonton, we're not going to make deals. We're going to stick to our principles, and we're going to support legislation, and we're going to request changes that make legislation better. We know we
Just hold that word deals there, Barry.
Yeah.
Of late, a lot of people have been talking to, getting some information from people. A lot of people are expecting a hung house kind of a
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
So that's where that word deal comes
Yeah,
in, right?
yeah.
So
deal, coalitions, whatever.
So
support
are you looking
agreements.
at that situation coming in?
Yes, we're
If
looking
either of the
at it.
leaders walking in here and says, Barry, let's talk about it
Yeah.
over some cup of coffee or a drink in the evening.
Well,
What do you say? Are chaps coming in?
For sure. You know what? I think conversations are important to have.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be limited by them because you're worried about how somebody might look at it. But the fact is that we should be having conversations. We
Yeah.
should be building relationships, and we should be learning to taking the time to understand each other. That allows us to work together better. But in the House itself, like when it comes to what people have been calling, when you look at the federal situation,
Yeah.
people are very critical of how that is, a supply or support agreements, whatever they are. We will be at some point the Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, if we're in a minority situation, will choose one of the two bigger parties who do usually the most seats. They start with, we'll say, okay, you have the chance to form government. And we're not going to be part of the deal. Like we're not going to say we'll support you unequivocally. That will not happen. That will not happen. I will not allow that to happen. That's one
Wow.
thing where.
So that's a statement that you're making,
That's
that
right.
you will
No.
not allow that deal thing to happen in
No.
Alberta, whether or not you guys get a chance to get into the power situation and be a part of the government.
Yeah.
So you will never be a part of the coalition government.
No, I don't think so. I can't see a situation where we wouldn't. We need to support good legislation.
Perfect.
We need to support a good direction, and if that comes from an amendment that the opposition puts up, then we would be inclined to support a good amendment. And we're not going to blindly vote for legislation that doesn't serve the needs of Albertans. Are we going to have to compromise? Are we going to have to go slower at times than we would want? Absolutely, we will, because we need the government to move forward.
Yeah.
But we will not sign off on, we're going to support you no matter what. At the end of the day, we're not going to make the government fall, or we're not going to force the Lieutenant Governor to step in and call an election again. We're not, because if the legislation is bad, the Alberta Party MLAs are not going to support it. I don't see them doing that. That being said, we have a situation also with the Alberta Party. We're not going to whip those votes. Like MLAs have to represent their community at that time they
True
vote.
that.
And so we trust them to make good judgments, but we're not going to sign off on a support agreement with
So-
anybody.
Does Alberta Party, you as a leader, are you in the favor of the Sovereignty Act which has been passed in the legislative? Or what are your
No.
thoughts on that?
No.
A big no to that?
Big no. All the tools that Alberta needs to stand up for itself within Canada exist already. The gap is creating a relationship with the other premiers and with whoever the Prime Minister of the country is. We can be a very difficult place to govern. A federation of 10 or more,
Yeah.
jurisdictions
Jurisdictions, yeah.
with very,
Different
delineated,
ideologies,
that's
different
right,
governments, different
and different
philosophies,
responsibilities,
different,
provincial
yeah,
to federal.
different communities.
And so, we often, as I remember as a municipal politician, we often got asked about issues of provincial or federal jurisdiction. And the key is to work together. The key is that uh, I do not believe that the Premier of Ontario wants Alberta to go bad. I do not believe that Alberta wants Quebec to be punished or to have to be somehow left out of things. I think we need to work together. Does that mean we always get our way? No, it doesn't. But we need to create a conversation and an atmosphere where we can move things forward. And we have different interests to protect. We have different perspectives to represent. But at the end of the day, we want people to be able to have a better quality of life, have hope and opportunity. I think everyone feels the same way. So let's talk about the things we agree and then work our way through the harder things. I don't think that's happening. I think we politically benefit, or at least we think we do, from the fighting.
This is very interesting, Barry, because uh, the reason that we came up with this initiative was like you're talking, the reason for the entire initiative of Voice Alberta is to make more and more people talk.
Yeah.
Talk the real thing. Talk about the real issues. What is the real perspective? Just two people fighting, sitting at the top, and I'm right, I'm wrong, you are right, I'm wrong. Is that what Alberta is? Definitely not.
No.
So there is more representation. Like there is the need for more representation in that legislative assembly where the kind of things that you're saying, the name calling and the points of different orders are not called in every second minute.
Yeah.
So that's lovely, and I'm sure that more people need to understand what you are saying here right now. We don't need to tighten the borders.
That's
We need
right.
to ease out things with conversations, run away from bad words like deals, and open up to understanding what Alberta needs more than what a political party needs to put a stamp on.
Exactly.
That's exactly what the initiative of Voice Alberta is also completely in tune with.
And I commend that. I spoke at a group that does similar, does it in a Publix where they bring in speakers. It's nonpartisan. They don't take a position, but they allow that opportunity for that conversation to take place. And I think we need more of that because unfortunately, our politics in the last 10 years, I think the leaders of the parties, both provincially and federally, have taken advantage of the lack of conversation, knowing that they don't really need to have more than 3 or 4 out of 10 people support them in order to be in power.
Yeah.
So you leave the other 60% out of the conversation, and I think that's where the division comes from. People
right.
aren't actually being heard.
That's right.
And they
That's
need
right.
to be, because like I said, going back to some earlier points we made, neighbors and friends and family, they will help each other.
So now after COVID, Barry feels that we all need to get out, find your neighbors, hold their hands, talk about issues, have more coffee conversations, be out there for each other, and start. And I think politics in Alberta, which I have read, though I'm a very, very, I would say I'm just a newcomer, 4 years back, I
Okay.
came back to Canada. But I've felt, talking to so many Albertans, being around the Alberta, I've been trying to travel a lot. It's all about acceptability in Alberta. People talk politics because it's not politics. It's they are so much into their life. They feel
Yes.
that they need to talk because those decisions are being made for them.
Yeah.
So this is what the entire initiative of Voice Alberta is, where politics is not tabooed to specific, coffee shops or things. It was, talking, okay, this guy is going to be my MLA. Do you think he's a nice guy? Baking a bread, you can talk about it. I was talking to a leader of president of a political party, and she was so sweet, and she discussed with me, how baking a bread and having cabbage in the air fryer at the same point of time, and still talking politics.
Yeah.
And that's not politics then. That's about each other's life.
That's right.
So Barry, what would be your message to Voice Alberta, which is trying to get issues of the political arena into the common people? What do you
Yeah.
say about it?
I think you're doing exactly the way you need to do it. the world of governing, the world of politics is exactly right. I love the way you've said it. It shouldn't be centered around politics. It should be centered around people's lives and the things that affect them, the things that can help them. Too often we frame them as a political struggle. And really what it is that when it comes right down to it, if you take off your blue cape or your orange cape or whatever cape you wear, and you just step into that yard and you talk to that person about what they need, whether it's public transit or whether they need help for a disabled family member or whether they need training, does it matter who they're voting for or what their politics are? It's not. So I encourage you to continue on and have these conversations, and in a genuine way. I understand and I sense from you that that's your goal, and we need more of that. And if we have more of that, at the end of the day, it'll serve Alberta very, very well.
Thank you so much, Barry. And Barry has been so kind today to take out time early in the morning in the Calgary. We're sitting at around what, -12 right now?
Yeah, it's not bad out there. I
Not
can
bad.
live
And
with
so
it.
looking at the young summer and late spring, I think Alberta should have a not bad kind of a government formed. And
I hope so.
Barry, I'm sure that hall would have more representation there. Thank you so much, and all the best to you for the elections and your candidates. We hope to keep catching Barry despite his busy schedules here and there. And we will surely take you sometime into his constituency. Which constituency are you going to be studying?
Yeah, we haven't decided that yet. We are considering that, but we'll let people know here very shortly.
So Barry's going to let you know where is he going to be soon being the candidate for, but definitely for now, it's not Brooks.
No, I don't think we'll be running
Madison
in
Hat.
Madison Hat.
No. All the best. Thank you so much, Barry, for your time. And Albertans, this is the place where you'll keep listening to a lot of real perspectives from some real statesmen, as we say. Okay, let's leave the word politicians there. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.